Welcome to Living History. This is the unique show that explores the memories and experiences of the people who put this great nation on their backs when it needed it the most and carried it through some tough and special times, where we really explore the history of this country and the truth is stranger than fiction realities of how we got to be where we are. Most people are aware that during World War II there were two principal theaters of action, the war in Europe and the war in the Pacific. Yet inside each of those theaters there were regional battles with characteristics indigenous to the places that they were fought. Most pilots will tell you from wherever they flew that the war in the air was very specific to where they were fighting. Well, there was a little-known theater of war that took place in the mountains between India and China. We effectively refer to it as the hump. America had to keep China with raw materials and supplies because China was one of our allies and they were really close to falling to Japan. We resupplied them through aerial routes over the Himalayas from India. Many people haven't heard these stories, but they are fascinating. And here is one for you to enjoy.
About December 17th, 1943, I flew my first mission into China. Ended up totally with about 106 missions on the China airlift. The airlift was designed to keep China in the war and keep them occupying Japanese troops in China. They had no real source of supplies, so everything we flew into China was used either by the Chinese or what meager Air Force forces we had in there. Japanese interception was very rare. We very seldom saw a Japanese plane, but the losses were quite high due to weather and equipment failures. The old gag is the fact that the air route between the Assam, Brahmaputra River Valley in India and Kunming, China was called the Aluminum Trail. You could find your way across the Himalayas by following the aluminum wreckage on the mountainsides all the way. Compared to combat organizations like flying in Europe or the theater war with bombing missions, our aircraft loss rate was very high. Lost a lot of airplanes, but fortunately, most of the crew members were able to bail out and return. So aircraft losses high, personnel losses comparatively low. Because of the few instances where we thought we were being intercepted by Japanese planes, we could usually dive into the clouds and hide because we were unarmed. But in February, the Japanese were the Army was putting on a drive to invade India. And in the Kaladan River Valley of Western Burma, they cut off a lot of British troops of the 14th Army that were isolated and surrounded. We were detached to fly air supply missions, drop ammunition and food to these units for a period of about 10 days. We were then had fighter escort by British Hurricane squadrons in Dozari. And after that was over, we went back to flying the hump, but a few weeks later, the Japanese actually crossed the border into India and what terminated in the Battle of Kohima and Imphal. And we were again detached down south to fly supply missions into Imphal and to evacuate British wounded soldiers out of that theater. So that was the closest we really came to combat. We were forced to abort landings at a few of the airstrips due to combat, but we never any under really large threats.
Like most people, you probably bought an annuity, life insurance, or other financial product to provide for your future. Unfortunately, these products are often improperly explained and carry hidden fees and risks that can erase the benefits you thought you were getting. In short, you may not have it all which you were promised. My name is Stephen Roth, and I'm the founder of WMI, a unique company dedicated to protecting the public from negligence and fraud. Our 360 review tells you exactly what you really have, and unlike other companies, we're only paid if we improve your position. Insurance and investment companies rarely do the right thing voluntarily, and most agents are concerned only with their commissions. Clients who were sold the wrong products have recovered millions of dollars with our help, and we can also help maximize what you and your heirs receive from insurance, investments, and more, guaranteed. Call us today at 1-877-OPTIVIZE. That's 1-877-678-4847.
I was awarded the Air Medal twice and the Distinguished Flying Cross twice, yes. They weren't awarded for events. Like many practices in those days, they were awarded for survival more than anything. If you survived so long, you got an Air Medal. If you survived longer, you got a DFC and so forth. Blessedly, I escaped the Korean War because I received an assignment to Greenland. So I was marooned in the Arctic 1949, 1950, 1951 in a very isolated assignment that we hardly even knew there was a Korea. When flying with Mats on the Atlantic route, we were sent down to Washington, D.C. on a special mission to pick up the court-martial board, the defense counsel, the prosecution, and the defendants in the House of Hess crown jewel case. A colonel whose name I forget and a black captain called Kathleen Nash, I believe, had stolen the crown jewels of the House of Hess, the royal family in Hesse in Germany, and were melting down the gold and so forth. And they were court-martialed. The unusual thing about it was the fact we flew to Washington, picked up the passengers, flew to Bermuda, refueled, flew to the Azores, refueled, flew to Frankfurt, refueled, and we're on our way to Salzburg in Austria where the trial was being held, and received orders to get returned to Washington. The whole thing was canceled. So flew back to Frankfurt, back to the Azores, back to Bermuda, back to Washington. It was in the third day without sleeping. Flying an airplane was a horrible mission. Entertainment was sort of scarce. We had a few USO troops come through. I met Joey Brown, Jinx Falkenberg, the movie star, and a few other, Harry Berry, I think. But basically speaking, we had an old wind-up Victrola in our, had an 8-man bash, a bamboo hut where we lived in, and we played records for the most part. We had a movie theater there too that was quite up to date in the movies, on the base that is, with thatched roof and bamboo sides, but it was a theater at least. The area between the end of the war, I ferried B-29s for a while, from factory to user only, not in combat. Then I got assigned to the Military Air Transport Command's MAT's Atlantic Division, which was flying an airline type operation between the East Coast, Paris and Frankfurt. Did that for about 3 years. Ended up spending 6 months on the Berlin airlift. After that, returning from the airlift, spent all of my time with Air Defense Command in fighter squadrons, F-89s at Otis Air Force Base, F-104s at Westover Air Force Base, and finally, then for 3 years went to an air rescue squadron in the Azores down in the Atlantic. Ended up a year here at Oxnard Air Force Base with the 414th Fighter, which was F-101s. Got discharged or retired here actually in 1964, November.
Thank you for coming to another episode of Living History. We are so fortunate to be able to bring you the stories that we do, that we've been able to capture the spirit of the history of these people and bring it to you in their own words, with their own emotions, telling you exactly how this happened to them. These stories could not be retold by somebody else, which is the whole purpose of what a living history is and does. It's capturing the fear of the moment, the joy of the experience, and the reality of the lives that these people led. I really hope to see you again on the next episode of Living History. Thank you again.
Like most people, you probably bought an annuity, life insurance, or other financial product to provide for your future. Unfortunately, these products are often improperly explained and carry hidden fees and risks that can erase the benefits you thought you were getting. In short, you may not have at all what you were promised. My name is Stephen Roth, and I'm the founder of WMI, a unique company dedicated to protecting the public from negligence and fraud. Our 360 review tells you exactly what you really have, and unlike other companies, we're only paid if we improve your position. Insurance and investment companies rarely do the right thing voluntarily, and most agents are concerned only with their commissions. Clients who are sold the wrong products have recovered millions of dollars with our help, and we can also help maximize what you and your heirs receive from insurance, investments, and more, guaranteed. Call us today at 1-877-OPTIVIZE. That's 1-877-678-4847.